Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Episode 30. Yeah, I never know what to say. Good morning. Now I'm just going to eliminate good morning, good afternoon. 'Cause apparently, I never know what time it is. So I'm just going to eliminate that completely. Pickers Market Podcast, episode 30. Keith Gangl, Lisa Schreiber, Tyler Ellegard, Jeremy Bryan. That's me in case you guys know that by now. But episode 30. I'm going to do a little. You got something over there, Tyler?
We can't leave out Boss Man.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, the fearless leader. Is he like Shaq tall with that chef's hat on?
Like 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. That's phenomenal work, Tyler.
Yeah.
That is so what was that, Tyler, this morning?
So this morning, there's a new thing where everybody's in office now on Wednesdays, kind of a group gathering. So in honor of that spirit, this morning, since it's the first Wednesday that everybody is in office, they decided to throw a breakfast. And so they're flipping pancakes and sausages.
Pancakes it up. Now, is that out of Binger's actual wardrobe, or is that furnished?
I didn't see anybody else. I didn't see anybody else wearing a hat, though.
Well, exactly. I'm looking at Jay Guerin there with the solid Iowa. He didn't have to wear the hat.
No, I saw quite a few people with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Outfit.
So it is the uniform. It was the corporate uniform.
It was the corporate uniform.
Yeah.
It was a solid breakfast, by the way. Really good.
Nice.
Did you partake, Jeremy?
I did not.
Tyler did.
It was
saw
good.
that.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you two enjoyed it.
Anyways, I had to throw that up there.
I loved it. Good. All right. Episode 30. I'm going to pivot a little bit here for episode 30. We're going to call it the Calvin Coolidge episode.
What?
Not that Calvin Coolidge wore number 30, nor by his Wikipedia page was he even a particularly good athlete. They kind of railed him on it. They were like, yeah, he wasn't all that great of an athlete, but nonetheless. But he was our 30th president, and that's what we'll be discussing today. We're going to spend the time. We just had an election. We might as well talk about it, right? So that's what we're going to spend today, but I can't let it go without giving at least one shout out to number 30. That's Steph Curry, right?
Your guy.
I would have felt, if this had fallen under any other time, it would be the Steph Curry episode. He lost to Calvin Coolidge, which probably the first time he's ever heard that in his life.
Maybe the only one that did.
One other thing about 30. You and I are well past this, but
not so much.
We're well past it. Had some special significance on that side of the table, though, right? Didn't you guys just go over to the dark side?
I don't know where you heard that, Jeremy.
Nasty rumors, wasn't it? Yeah,
she's 25.
Right.
Again.
Thank you, Tyler.
Love
now
it.
You got it. Yeah.
But yes,
You crossed the line.
I passed the mark. Lisa did not.
Gotcha. Was there any particular wisdom gained post 30 and post 25, Lisa? that
No.
worth sharing?
Just a few more grays popping out. Body hurts a little bit more than it used to.
Yeah, I think the age kind of catch you at that wondrous mark, right? 30 is like, yeah, like Tyler said, it's you find some hurtful places
little sword,
right,
things that just never used to hurt before.
You do not
what is
recover.
that?
Yeah, you do not recover as fast when you grow out. It's like the seriousness of life catches on, right? It's like, I don't know, but all together
Kids
it's
over
like,
there, right?
Yeah, problems.
yeah, when you're in your 30s, I think people overall take you a little bit more serious because you're out of your 20s, right? So it's like finally I think, and that's the
You're
common
looked at as an adult.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
That's a common perception, I think, for society. You're in your 30s. You're now a full-fledged adult, so to speak.
Gangl, did that happen for you? Because I don't think anyone that I know still considers me an adult.
No, still waiting.
Yeah. All right, good. Well, don't worry. Gangl says 75 is great. So
Not quite there yet. Some
my
days
bad.
I feel like
my
it.
bad. All right. All right, let's get into it. This is going to be a politics episode, but it's going to be politics around financial. We're not going to talk a whole heck of a lot about results and implications of policy, all that other fun stuff. We're going to just kind of talk about finance and markets. If all of you are living under a rock, Donald Trump won. right? And the Senate is likely going to be a Republican Senate, and the House is still up for grabs. Just to catch everybody up, we're all caught up now, right?
Good.
I'm sure you needed me for that. But let's start with let's just start with early indications of winners and losers with regard to, again, financial markets. You can go anywhere you want with it, but Gangl, why don't we start with you? What are some of the consensus views about what this means in the market?
We'll start on the top. It's stocks positive for.
Yep.
I mean, so obviously the markets are open this morning. The S&P is up about 2%. No surprise. It's a red wave, so that means, generally speaking, less regulation, maybe some more M&A activity. The biggest thing that I look forward is taxes, the taxes that we're sunsetting. So I think that's going to drive the stock market. On the flip side, I think it's negative for the bond market. I mean, the bonds yields are up, I think 15 basis points. The 10-year treasury yield at almost 445, 450. So I think that's on the big takeaway. So it's less regulations. The fact that taxes probably were going to go up, potentially have the ability to stay the same or maybe go down, which I think the stock market really likes that. Less regulation, which is good for M&A activity, which you're seeing a lot of these financials really strong out of the start. Again, I think part of this trade gets faded, though. It's we're into it for a half hour before we start here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We'll I wouldn't get too excited, but I do think that's generally a positive setup.
Yeah, anything we're doing right now is under just kind of initial what we're seeing, what we're hearing. This is, I'm going to have the hugest disclosure we can about this, is that none of this is set in stone, right? We don't know for certain, but we're going to have a conversation at least about what this means just initially. So yeah, absolutely right. I tend to agree with you on where that direction is.
Part of my hot take on that, though, is I don't know if it really would have mattered who won, to be honest. Well, obviously we'll never know, but I think the market was it was pulling back. People were hedging against one way or another. So I think whoever won, I think the market was due for a nice pop.
Interesting.
Whether it was the same size run up. Because I think the bigger thing for the market is there was just so much uncertainty because the race was heading into it was so close.
Yep.
That there was just so much uncertainty. And now that the uncertainty is gone, market to go back and focus on what it needs to do, which is the fundamentals.
Okay.
So I don't think it really would have mattered if Trump won or Kamala won. I think we would have seen a similar size rally regardless. I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but
well, that's interesting because that's considered the clearing event.
Yeah.
But that date was known, right? So everybody knew the election was going to happen. So that's why I kind of disagree with that a little bit. That it's like the date was known that regardless of there was going to be a winner, right? A loser. So it's the fact that it happened. I don't know. I think it's more of a.
I think I agree with Tyler a little bit on this because, like the last presidential election, it took a little bit for swing states to really that we get the results. And yesterday was, I think, clear pretty fast.
Yeah.
So there was a clear winner. It was not a whole lot of discussions out there. And I think because it was so early and because it was so clear, it was positive for the market. And I agree with Tyler that it, no matter if it would be Harris or Trump, that it was just because it was so fast.
That it was
clear,
decided.
And
that's
decided,
that's a
and
difference.
It does not,
100% agree with that.
Drag
That's decided.
on for days.
Yeah,
and I think the uncertainty is gone. And the market can go back and focus on what's important, like fundamentals, the rest of the earnings season, rest of the year. I think...
Yeah,
because it was so fast.
I think you might have seen a different set of winners and losers, maybe at the outset, especially the initial reaction, depending on if that had been flipped the other way. You might have saw other companies working.
Yes,
I do agree with Gangl a little bit on the tax component of it, though, is that if this had been the other way of, the blue wall held up or whatever that was, I do believe that there would have probably been a higher likelihood that those would have sunset and they would have gone back up. And I think the market wouldn't have reacted quite as positively to that. So I think Lisa, you nailed it on the head, is that the decided component is probably the biggest clearing event.
And maybe to add a little bit to that, maybe it was not only the clear presidential winner here. It was also the Senate who turned Republican, and the probability of the House still not decided yet, but I think indications are positive that it could be Republican as well.
Sure.
And then, if we have a clean red sweep, basically, then it makes it even more possible that everything kind of gets implemented how the Republicans want, because they have the House, they have the Senate, which makes it even more likely that policies get implemented without a whole lot of resistance.
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay.
So I think that could be a positive, an initial positive as well, that we had a clear winner on the Senate as well on this side.
Sure, that makes some sense. Speaking of that, let's talk about just kind of. I think the one from a policy potential action, right, is the people we work with the most, right, are kind of nearer in retirement. So I think from the most likely effect of that, what they would be looking for financially would be probably around their planning around Social Security, Medicare, and those kinds of things. Tyler, why don't you start with just kind of, is there anything up for grabs at this point right now with regard to significant changes to either of those platforms that you see at the outset? Just again, understanding that we don't even know.
Yeah.
But just, do you see anything up for grabs in those that are going to significantly change Social Security or Medicare?
No, I think part of Trump's whole thing is, and I think I don't want to talk too much about politics, but part of Trump, you get the broader people that he's bringing in, and I think a good one of that is Elon Musk. Whether or not you like him or don't like him, Musk is very good at creating efficiencies. Okay. Right? We've seen that through Tesla. He cut, I think, 80% of Twitter X staff, and it's still running right at the same rate it was before. So I think that's, as far as like governmental plans, I think they're not going to cut anything, but they're going to try to make it more efficient so that maybe we spend less, not necessarily pulling back on how much they pay you in Medicare or Social Security. But I think that's the more purpose of what's up for grabs, is creating efficiencies within the government.
Okay. So not reductions of benefits, but efficiencies on the benefits we send out and how we operate those. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Gangl, you agree?
Yeah, at least on those two big categories. The Social Security, Medicare, I don't think are going to be part of that efficiency that Elon's going to be looking at. And I do think that's generally a positive. If maybe you can get an outsider that's not a politician to come in, someone like Elon that's got a big vision that actually can start pushing the needle at least one direction. It's got to be a slow bend anyway of this debt ceiling curve that we have going on. So I don't think Social Security, Medicare get touched, but I think other areas of the government could. Okay. I mean, they could start cutting parts of different departments and make it a little more efficient and cut back on some benefits. So I don't think it's, if there's some comeback, some cutbacks, it could happen. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, to my limited understanding at this point right now, I think that's part of the reason interest rates are going up, though, is that no one has really discussed how on spending. And this would have been either candidate again. But how we're gonna create those efficiencies, how we're going to spend less in order, because Social Security and Medicare are significant components of the overall federal budget, and they're only getting bigger, right? And we're still projected to have massive deficits going forward. None of that goes away immediately, right? No. I don't care who got elected. None of that goes away immediately. They still have problems to solve. And I think that's why you're seeing interest rates start to climb up too, is that the spending component, neither of them talked about the other way and saying we're going to massively cut, right? The only thing they were going to massively cut was taxes, which is government revenue, right? So you cut that, you got to figure that way out. So I would agree with all of you that, or Lisa, I guess I should ask you, do you agree with kind of what Tyler and Keith are saying with regard to no big substantial changes to Social Security and Medicare are considered at this point?
I would agree for the most part, but I would say that if Harris would have won, it would be much clearer that there are no cuts for those. Fair. And because Trump won, I think it's a little bit more in the dark, I would say. I think Medicare and all the benefits would have a little bit more secure if we would have seen a Harris win.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
So actually, here's one thing I'll actually throw out on this is no changes to current people taking Social Security and getting Medicare, but I think there could be, if they look at what is the efficiency, how does the trust look like? Like how underfunded is it? I think you could see them make changes to who can get it in the future and how much they get in the future. So younger generations like Lisa and myself being the
cross 30. Well, one of you are cross 30. The other one is still up in the air.
being the 30-year-old. I think the benefits that I could receive in the future may be very different than what people are receiving today.
I agree with Tyler on that as well.
Yep.
And I think what we also have to think about, what maybe is like down the road and might be a little bit too much out of the blue now, but we have to see it's Trump's second presidency, and it would have been Harris' first. So he's not up for re-election in 4 years. So, and all those things, cutting benefits for Medicare and all those stuff is very unpopular.
Yeah.
To get re-elected.
Yeah.
There's no fear on this side for him.
Interesting.
So I think it's not yet up front.
Yeah.
But I think that will come into focus as we go forward and as we talk about this topic.
Yeah, I don't think there's any fear for him, but I think, the minute you start cutting those programs, the Senate and the House, nobody's getting reelected. Right? That's their immediate fear. Is like, well, I guess I'll see you all later.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd also throw out J.D. Vance probably wouldn't agree too much with it, because I imagine he has future aspirations.
You would assume,
being 40 and he's got a lot of time to maybe takes a couple of election cycles off before running, but I think he would be widely against doing anything like that.
It would be, it'd be tough.
I think it would be not too much of an influence, but I think there could be like, it could make a difference in how this is implemented or how this is seen
No, I think that's the case outside of Medicare and Social Security. I think that could hold true to some extent, that he maybe, those are the third rails that no one wants to touch, right? So that's I don't think anything for our clients and advisors for Social Security, nothing's going to change. No. Maybe now if you're planning for a Tyler or a Lisa, maybe, but that's to be seen. That's many years down the road.
Yeah, we will definitely see about that. One thing I wanted to hit on real quick, and I was surprised by the level of commentary I got on this when we've done the client events and things here recently, is a lot of people were hitting me on unrealized capital gains taxes. And I think there was actually more concern about that than I had anticipated, because my response was, good luck ever getting that passed. I was like, that seems like no matter who's in is basically because no one knows how to implement it. No one knows. That would just basically ruin everything, right? Yeah. So is it, I'll just ask quickly, do you guys think that's all off the table? Unrealized capital gains taxing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely off the table.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think also how Harris proposed it, that would have been, I think, for very wealthy people.
Well, so here's my hot take on that is it always starts with the wealthy or ultra wealthy. All the taxes typically do, and then it trickles down to everybody else.
Yep.
So I think if they did implement it in a Harris win, I think you could see future taxes be on everybody.
Right, but it would have been not immediately for the majority of people. And I would have said if people are really concerned about this, then you're in a very lucky position.
It's 100 million plus, I think, was the threshold in assets.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it became a substantial talking point because the people I was talking to did not have 100 million plus.
What?
And they were concerned by it.
Yeah,
exactly. That's my circle of influence. Yeah. Speaking just quickly on circle of influence, how far are we going to stretch Elon capacity here? You guys are all talking. Is he just going to run everything at this point now? What is going on here?
He's a visionary. What surprised me, the stock, it's Tesla. The stock is public vehicles
popping today,
up
right?
like 12-14%, which shocks me, because if you really want him to go focus a little bit on government, I assume he's not doing his Tesla job as efficient. But I know that there's benefits if he's in the government, that Tesla probably gets a benefit of that, right? And that's why the stock's moving. But he's getting stretched a little thin, I would think, as much as
and then there was rumor today that NVIDIA was going to invest in his XAI company as well.
Yeah, he's got to figure it out.
He's got a lot going on.
Yeah. Guys just playing the drums, and he's got them everywhere.
He's a brilliant guy. I still don't own the stock, but
talked about that one before. Yep. All right, let's pivot here. I want to talk about, because that was us. You guys did a great job of kind of setting the stage. But now what I want to talk about is kind of perception versus reality, and a little bit of you might not know. So I gave you all a homework assignment. I'm going to start with my own, cherry picked it. So apologize if I took yours. But so when I talk about perception versus reality, I want to start with Trump in 2016. widely perceived, and you all can feel free to disagree with me, but what was widely perceived, and we're seeing it right now too, is that energy companies are listed as kind of one of the areas of benefit. Lower regulation, we want to pump more out, going to be great for them, right? Eerily similar to 2016. Kind of a similar thought process. Also, Rex Tillerson, the ex-CEO of Exxon, was at that time, for a little while, the Secretary of State.
Yep.
Which, he's in there. They want to drill. There's going to be no regulation. Let it go. Energy's going to do great. Do you know the worst performing sector during Trump's tenure was the energy sector? This is what I'm talking about when I talk about perception versus reality and trying to make these assumptions that we were just talking about now about these initial things. There's just way, way, way too many other inputs that can affect what actually occurs. And so trying to do this is, in my opinion, a fool's errand. You have to understand way too many things that a president can influence, but not basically change the course completely of what the fundamentals of business will do. And unforeseen events down the road can have significant impacts on that. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Gangl, do you have another example of kind of that perception versus reality?
I mean, if you just take that same energy example, go to what do you think's been the best sector under Biden and Harris?
You would have thought it would have been who well, you'd think it'd be tech, right?
Yeah, no, it's been energy.
It's energy.
so that's why it's just odd. And I mean, you can look at either sectors or even the markets. I mean, when back in 2016, when Trump got elected, the futures and markets were limit down 5%. What the markets do over the next 4 years, I think it depends on when you're looking at. You and I were talking about this yesterday. It's around 65 to 70%, whether you're using inauguration or election. Dates.
Whatever dates you want to use,
but very strong.
Trend
right?
is the same. Yeah.
Now, same thing with Biden. If you thought, Trump's policies were great, also you had Biden, he'd be a disaster. Well, I mean, the markets are up almost about the same, slightly more, I think. Actually, I think they're up 80%.
Yep. And
then, like I said, and the surprise there was energy being the best. You certainly wouldn't have thought that. So that's where you have to be very careful when you're making these big sweeping projections. And that's kind of what the market's trying to do this morning. And that's, I think the market's getting a little excited, up 2% as we speak. Financials, banks, M&A activity, which is good. They're up like 5%, but you have large cap banks like Bank of America up 9-10%.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong move. And we'll see if that's sustainable.
Yeah. $100+ billion company. Is it 10% better? Is it $10 billion better than it was yesterday? I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah,
but
so that's what you have to be careful. I mean, the one area, if we start talking about what could be good or bad going forward, would be like clean tech, which is generally speaking a very high in the Democratic side of things. A lot of legislation got pushed the last 4 years. I think those stocks could be impaired, that type of deal, right? But the same thing you could have made about the energy argument. So we'll see. But we'll see. Names that we really don't own anyway.
Yeah, we're not there a lot. Lisa, what do you got?
I extend on the energy.
We're all just energy.
Here.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I extend a little bit on you, Jeremy.
Okay.
You talked about Trump and energy and how drill baby drill was not related into performance in his presidency, and I compared it to the first Bush administration, where also Republican president, where you think, okay, generally the perception is Republican president good for energy sector. And he also enforced that very much to kind of drill, and there was all that the fracking as a new basically technology coming up in how to drill oil and how fast to get it out, and there was a huge push on that, and overall the energy sector did great with less oil that was flooded into the market because it was the technology was so new and everything. And Trump with all the drill baby drill, and there's actually more oil out there, and it did kind of bad.
Did pretty darn poorly actually.
So to compare it to that, there's initial signs, initial excitement in the market, how we see it now, but does it relate to full term or full administration? No, it does not, because there are so many other things coming into effect, and who's in office kind of gets more in the background as we progress, and when the first excitement settles.
And this isn't even a blaming of like Trump for 2016 to 2020's energy performance, right? It wasn't policies that he put together. we had a pandemic. It was the one time, we talked about this in a prior episode about saying it was probably one of the silliest things when energy went negative, right?
The price of oil negative.
Negative, right? We'll never see that, or I don't think we'll ever see that again. I hope we don't. From that side, though, I mean, that wasn't, you can argue about what reactions and all that fun stuff too, but that event in and of itself wasn't a policy decision, but it had an influence on the price of oil. That, again, going back to when you're using politics as the only means of saying something is going to be good or bad, you're probably going to lose. Tyler, what do you got?
This is kind of funny because the energy guy is not going to be talking about energy. Everybody else talks energy.
Should have had you go first.
Tech.
But so the other one that I thought was interesting, I'll talk about mine in a second, but Keith, with Biden's presidency, another really good performing sector was financials.
Yep.
And you had mentioned it, regulation, right? You would think with more regulation on the banks, they would do poorly, but financials did very, very well during a Biden presidency. So that was also interesting. But I'll go with the Clinton administration. Since Keith took mine, I was going to talk about energy. But I mean, when you think back to Clinton, now I wasn't around really to actually pay attention to it, but when he was there, you had a president who was raising taxes on the corporate and high-end consumer side. So naturally you would think that spending would go down, but yet you had a phenomenal market. Mm-hmm. And you also had a reduction of government debt, all sorts of things, right? So it's just so hard to predict what's actually going to happen. Like Trump could cut the corporate tax rate to 15% and stocks could do crappy. Yeah. Like you'd never know because you can think one way, but it's not always going to be accurate. Yeah. So, I think you guys have said it already, but we're not going to know.
It's just it's one of a myriad number of inputs. Yeah. Right. It's one. And to be completely honest, I mean, I think we've said this multiple times. It's probably not, I don't know, is it in the top 5? Maybe, but it's certainly not one. No. Yeah. Earnings growth. I would put earnings growth on there. And that can be influenced, but not significantly influenced over longer periods of time by presidencies. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's wrap it up with this little spaghetti wall here. Let's have some fun with the actual voting process. I want to tell a quick story. I don't get heartwarming every now and then, but I'm going to do it right now. 2016. I was in line. It was the last time I voted actually on the day of. I've voted early now subsequently since. But at 2016, we were all in line. We were walking through, and there was a first-generation immigrant who was 2 of us ahead. And my favorite part about that process was she was so nervous. Like, she wanted to get it right, and she was asking all the questions, like, where do I go over here? How much do I have to fill in the circles and all that? She was taking it so absolutely seriously that I thought it was just awesome. And everybody around was just trying to help her out, get her to the right area, say, yep, you go here, you do your thing. She was so happy afterwards. It was like that re-engaged me as saying that this is actually a good thing that we do, even though it can feel either good or bad, depending on who wins and loses and how you feel about it. The actual process itself in that regard was very good. So there's my ending soapbox. I'll go back to being the cranky guy, but it's not perfect, right? So the voting process in and of itself, give me a quick analysis on, is it overrated? Is it underrated? Is it properly rated? The actual submission of ballots. What do you got for me, Gangl?
The actual process of voting, I think it's fantastic. I think everybody should do it. The one thing I talked to Lisa the other day, I thought was interesting coming from Austria. Maybe you want to talk about kind of the process of, which I thought was fascinating, just the voter ID, whether it's good or bad, and kind of your take on that. And just that's part of, I think, the process, right? Yeah. I thought it was just interesting from an outsider standpoint. And you just want to give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, again, that's the first election that I'm experiencing within the US, which is much different than I thought it would be, or a little bit more, being in the middle of all of it. But still having the outside perception a little bit because I'm not a citizen, so I do not vote. But Dominic and I are really engaged to kind of figure out how it works in different states and then how this all comes together. And it was mind-blowing to us that in some states it works so differently, that there's no unified system,
Mhm.
that in some states you do not even, and that blew my mind, you do not even need a photo ID
Mhm.
to vote. And then we were there, sitting there, and we're like, okay, we do not know the process because we never did the actual process.
Yeah.
But we're like, how does this even work? How do they even do it, right? To
Yeah.
make sure that one person is one vote too. And I think we came to the conclusion that all of what we heard also in previous elections with voting fraud and all the allegations that, oh, is it going the right way? Is it really, one person, one vote? Is it kind of everybody does what it's supposed to do? And is there really is it like the system really in place? And I think it would help first to have a unified system that is
Interesting.
the same in every state,
Yep.
so that a person in California knows what the regulations around voting and how it's counted in Georgia. That
Gotcha.
a Minnesotan knows how it's going to go in Texas.
Yeah.
What you need to vote, how you vote, how it works. And I think that would help alleviate a lot of those, oh, does it really go the right way in other states? Does
Gotcha.
it really, because when you do not really understand as a person in one state how it works in a different state, that's, I think, these are the seeds to kind of, if I don't understanding, maybe it kind of is a little bit rigged, or it
Gotcha.
it's,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
can sow
there-
the seeds of questions.
Just
right,
yeah,
just
both
ask
sides,
questions.
on both sides.
yeah,
right?
and then there are
Yeah.
there's room for error because I do not know how it works there. And if I would know that it's working the same in every single state, then there would be maybe more trust as well.
Interesting.
and less
Because in
questions around
Austria
that.
it's pretty
It's pretty strict.
strict.
Yes.
Yeah. Just
Okay.
talk about
So
that.
we do not have to register to vote. We are automatically registered
think is
when we turn
fantastic.
16 from the government. So the government tells us you are allowed to vote.
Gotcha.
You do not have to do anything. You just show up with your passport. You have one office that you have to go to. You can do in mail all of that fun stuff, but it's very strict, and they yeah,
And it's the same regardless
it's
if
the
you're
same
in
process in
yeah.
every region of
Every
Austria,
voting
every
area.
corner. And I think that's what was interesting when I discussed it with my husband, is like, how are there so many questions around if the voting is working correctly here?
Yeah.
While we never heard about anything of that in Austria. There was not even a thought in the past if the election is going the right way,
Interesting.
if the votes are counted the right
Sure.
way. And I think it's because in Austria, it's by any means not compared to the US, because we are a little over 9 million people, right? We are very much smaller than the US. But it's different in every office. It's different. The process is the same.
Gotcha.
So people trust it. People know how it's working in every single corner. And there was never a thought and a second question of if it's going the correct way or not. And I think that helps
Nice.
because it's people understand it. And it's the same no matter where you are in Austria.
I like it. Tyler, help me out here. I'm going to make you be the tech geek. Should technology and should we incorporate technology here to help the process, to maybe add some consistency, to maybe add some, I don't know, add improvements to the process, if you will?
Yeah. So fun backstory. So this is the first year I've actually voted in person.
Okay.
So 2012, I was a college freshman. I decided not to vote because I didn't know anything about any of the parties.
Okay.
That and he was partying.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Tough to vote from the bottom of the keg.
No comments.
Worse.
And then 2016, I didn't vote because I was studying for different exams, and I was like, I don't feel like standing at the polls and taking time away from studying.
Gotcha.
And then 2020 we mailed in, and so this is my first time being so to the point of the woman that you're standing behind.
Yeah.
Who was nervous. I was nervous.
You were that.
Oh,
you,
So I was like, I don't know where
30-year-old nervous
right,
guy.
yeah.
I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what the process looks like. Right. And it was, I mean, the people there were very helpful and calm, and there was no line. And so that was also really nice that I didn't have to stand in a line.
Nice.
So, but as far as technology goes, I think there's a fine line between adding technology and not, because the concern, and we've seen this recently with senior officials having their phones hacked by China, or rumors of that being true, right? So like there's ways that these things can be manipulated.
Mhm.
And so I think there's still some concern around adding too much technology where there can be manipulation.
Gotcha.
And so, and I also think the filling out a bubble sheet, it's kind of nostalgic.
Okay.
And you also I felt pretty confident that, nothing was going to be tampered with, right?
Mhm.
You put it into a scanner, it tells you that your vote has now been counted, and it drops into this secure box that obviously, hopefully nobody can get at. But the idea is that I think that was the right amount of technology.
Okay.
Was, putting it in, feeding it into the scanner, and then it going into this safe-like thing that can't be accessed, right? So I think as far as where we're at technology-wise, I think it's fine. I think we need to standardize it, as Lisa was saying, across, because I saw videos of some states were doing electronic voting on computers.
Yep.
Minnesota does the bubble fill-out sheets.
Mhm.
I just think there needs to be a standard process across the board, and not add too much technology to the point that it risks the security of voters.
Got it. Gangl, what do you think about that? Technology wise?
Yeah, I mean, the pros and cons, I guess I kind of agree with Tyler. I mean,
Or actually, sorry, one more thing on that. So like also we had the Delta issues with CrowdStrike,
Mhm.
right? If something like that happens on election night,
Right,
that would be horrendous.
Yeah.
I think technology is good as long as it can be verified. It's going to be super secure, and verification, like Tyler said, the fact that you have ballots drop in that were filled out, dropped in. If you need to go back and do a paper count, you at least can do a spot check of verification of like 500 votes are here, 350 for this candidate, 150 for that client, ties out, right? Versus also we have 800, right? Or some made up number or whatever. So that's where you do worry about hacking, but I think things are fairly secure. So I'm a little less nervous on that. But I do like the standardization. That's why it was fascinating yesterday when Lisa and I were talking about it. She goes, "Oh yeah, it's more strict. It's like boom, boom, boom." And it's like, then you get rid of, fears on both sides that, elections were stolen or votes were cast illegally or whatever. So I just think that's just a great way of going. How about you?
What do you think, Jeremy? I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
What do you think about IDs for voters? And I go back and forth both ways, because I understand that there are people that don't have IDs or ways to get
Is
them.
every adult fingerprinted now?
I don't
at
think
18?
so.
Well, any services that you do,
I think if you're registered to
vote,
vote, exactly. I think if you had a registered to vote and you could put your fingerprint on something and that would be your identification for it, I think that's where I would go.
Yeah,
that's where the technology for that.
Yeah,
is.
that would be.
I don't know what I'm sure there's a good argument on the other side of why not doing that.
Biometrics stealing it.
Exactly. Whatever that may be. Yeah, government knows who I am, all that fun stuff that goes along with that. But I think from a speed and efficiency of process, if I could throw my finger on something and be like, yep, that's Jeremy. He lives there. There you go. Here's your ballot, or here's. Now, again, personally, I would rather have the computer screen where it just boom, 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 and then you could say, yeah, it's securely locked or whatever it would be. I'm willing to take that risk to a certain extent, I guess. I would prefer that, but I think from that side, it's like there are people who don't get IDs for whatever reason that could be allowed to vote. That's what the legal process has been for a long period of time, but some identification purpose that's a little easier would be beneficial for me.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up on that before we could probably sit here all day and talk about this stuff, but we should probably hang it up. Until next time, everybody, we'll talk more about just regular markets probably next time around, but figured this was worth it. Until next time, take care.